You scouted your area for weeks. This morning, there was no need for the alarm. You hit the field early, and the plan is to do what so many hunters wish they could do. Speak the language of the white-tailed deer.
I am hunter.
Mark Kaiser is headed east. Bill Miller is headed west. They're both headed to central South Dakota. Here's the deal. Bill has a South Dakota tag. Mark didn't draw one.
It doesn't take much to get me to go on a deer hunt. So when my good friend Bill Miller asked if maybe I had an opening to hook up with him in South Dakota because he'd drawn a premium tag, I found the time.
To be honest with you, I never really liked Mark Kaiser that much to start with. He's got all these fantastic hunting places, but for years, he'd never take me to them. I'd have to jibe him and poke him. And finally, I got him in this habit of remembering, oh yeah, my buddy Bill over in Minnesota, maybe I should invite him. One of the things that I keep teasing Mark about is I want to shoot a white-tailed deer that he has rattled in for me. He is such an aggressive whitetail hunter. He uses aggressive tactics no matter where he goes and what part of the season he's hunting. When these deer are coming into rut and are in full rut like they are right now, he gets over the top aggressive, and I just love it. I love hunting any animal that's responding to something that you're doing.
Rattling deer is one of those things you can do or you can't. There are some who say the harsh sound of antler on antler only works in Texas, that anywhere north of Dallas this so-called technique simply won't work. Well, those people have never met Mark Kaiser.
Now the key to rattling and any deer calling is not to get too carried away. Don't call too much, but be realistic. And realism for rattling is short bursts of fighting. Bucks generally don't fight for long periods of time. It's usually a short, quick fight. So that's how you want your rattling setup to be. But along with the rattling setup, lots of crashing, lots of breaking, clinking. You also will hear different things, such as at the beginning of the fight, the snort wheeze call. It's just a simple call that deer use to tell another buck, hey buddy, you're in my space and you take the wrong step and I'm going after you.
Central South Dakota is a combination of tall grasslands that give way to timbered river bottoms. It's simply great deer habitat for both whitetail and muleys. In this country, bring the boot leather. To reach the deer, or at least the bucks that matter, you're going to put on a few miles. But the rewards and the ability in the end to make them come to you is amazing.
Well, the very first morning, it didn't take long to prove to me that Mark's in tune with these deer. The rut's definitely on. The very first spot we settled into, the sun was barely up. He made some grunts, a few rattles, and bucks started coming to the horns.
It was one of those bucks that a guy's really got to sit and think about, especially on the first day. Should I shoot that buck or should I pass? Bill thought about it for quite a while, and that buck gave him plenty of time to think about it. He was working his way in, then he came right down in front of us. He was within bow range. But in the end, Bill decided he wanted to do just a little more looking, just to see what else was out there. Pat had told us about a couple of other big bucks on the ranch, so it wasn't like we were looking at the only nice buck we'd see on the whole hunt. After that buck disappeared, Bill and I packed up, headed on to the next spot.
There are many who bring a pair of antlers into the field and start smashing away, then wonder why the deer won't respond. But it's all about knowledge, technique, and the right tools. And out here, Mark Kaiser is a master of the craft. North American Hunter is brought to you by Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. Ruger, rugged, reliable firearms. M&P, advanced by design. Can-Am off-road vehicles. Can-Am, the ride says it all. And by Matthews, catch us if you can. Central South Dakota. Miles of rolling grasslands, winding muddy river bottoms, and oh yeah, big deer.
You come hunt with us here in South Dakota, you're going to see a lot of deer.
Mark Kaiser and Bill Miller are hunting West River with Dakota Ranch Outfitters. Their goal is to call in a big buck. There is a true art in calling and rattling deer, and it doesn't work all the time. But when it does, and with those tools in the hands of Mark Kaiser, it can be, well, amazing. This deer was passed, a first-day decision that's easy to second guess, which they did. Oh, for about an hour.
I know these river bottoms are full of deer. The rut is on, so they're going to be moving all day long. I just had to give myself time to get out there and see it and experience it.
I told Bill, why don't you set up and throw out one more long distance set of rattle. There might still be another buck back in there. We started rattling, and within minutes, another whitetail come cruising straight in. He heard the antlers come cruising in, and I finished him off with a nice series of grunts. That buck ended up well within firearm range, almost bow range. But what was really neat is while we were watching that buck, a mule deer buck, he had been hearing the same calls and come cruising in off the side. Big old bruiser of a body mule deer. His antlers weren't quite what we were looking for, but he definitely was in the game. Jumped a fence and come right up to that whitetail buck. Well, they weren't blood brothers or anything like that, but they looked each other over, see who was more dominant, and then passed and went their separate ways.
I don't know a half a dozen other places in the world where I can have a tag in my pocket that I can pick either of these two deer if I decided this is the one I want. I didn't realize, I guess, how apt mule deer are to respond to the same calls that you're using for whitetail.
The goal since the start of the trip has been to call in deer, or more specific, for Mark to call one in for Bill. But sometimes things happen so fast. The best laid plans change, and sometimes it's all good.
When you're out here, you really alternate styles of hunting very fluidly. It changes from a stalk and glass hunt to a still hunt to a rattling setup, and just one after another as you move through the river bottom. There's a doe right there, right there. All of a sudden, there was a doe standing up in front of us. And anytime you see a doe this time of year, you can be pretty sure there's a buck in the area. Sure enough, a second later, there's a buck, and he looks like a pretty good one. The first view I had of him was only directly from the back, and that is the worst possible way to try to judge any deer because they all look gigantic from the back. So we gave him a little time. He wasn't leaving that doe, and yeah, he turned out to be a really, really nice deer. It was pretty good. I don't think I hit him. Maybe I got that bush.
Still right there.
There must have been some twig or branch that I didn't see when I was focused on that buck's vitals. I took the shot and I didn't touch him. But strange things happen during the rut, and that was one of those strange things. He was so intent on that doe, he was not going to leave her, and she didn't bolt, so he stayed right there. The second time, I made it count.
I think you got him that time. Good shot. Good shot. I think you hit limbs here the first time, don't you think?
Must have.
I mean, that was the only thing I could see. Listen. Good job, you got him. He hit the dirt hard. Ah, he's a nice buck.
Yeah, I'll say. On the side of the rack that was tipped down when he fell, there was an extra point, a full extra point. He's actually a 5x6 deer.
We had used every technique in the book to put this buck on the ground. We'd used spot and stalk. We'd been rattling, calling, grunting, bleeding, snort wheezing, and still hunting. And in the end, we just nearly bumped right into that buck like you bump into an old friend at the post office. Bumped that doe right out in front of him. He wasn't leaving for
Finish of the hunt was typical for Western hunting and typical for hunting the rut. We got my deer down, we did all the things we needed to do for TV, we got the deer dressed out, and we had a bit of a drag to get it back to where we could get the truck to the correct side of the river to pick the deer up. And wouldn't you know it, we picked the deer up by the horns, Mark and I started dragging, and Mark looks off to kind of in front of us to the right, and here comes another deer.
Hey, look at that right there.
Well, obviously we dropped the horns, threw up our binoculars, and wouldn't you know it,
Holy cow, look at that build.
oh man. It is a magnificent 4x4 whitetail. Long main beams curled way out in front of his nose, long tines, real high. I mean, he had one broken tine, but this deer with that tine would probably score 150, 155. I mean, an incredible 4x4, what back east we'd call an 8-point whitetail. Great deer.
Isn't that the way it always goes?
I'm perfectly happy, but that would make me happier. Holy cow. And with my tag wrapped around the leg of the deer I took, all we could do is stand there and watch, but what a sight to see.